I think that takes us to next thing I wanted to talk about, which was just where we're at. Not just Purdue, but the entire bracket, how it's shaping up, and maybe some national people, what they're thinking, who they like, who they dislike, and
so do you have like kind of Joe Lenardi's base bracketology up, or do you have sort of an idea from just memory? Like before we
yeah, I mean,
put it up into context for people in case they don't know.
your one seeds have been intact. Purdue, UConn, Houston.
Those are lock number ones, I think, at this
Yeah.
point, unless something just catastrophic. I mean, like it's,
Yeah. You're running out of time if you're making a run at a number one seed. And I think that UConn could lose out and people would still have them somehow, some way, the overall favorite to win the national championship and maybe even go compete for a world championship in the NBA if they want to later. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm blown away at some of the analysis. I mean, I certainly think that they're deserving. They fit the profile of a number one seed. But the more I watch, they're certainly not my, number one overall. They're not my two. They may not be my three.
Yeah. I mean,
but
they are defending national champions, and they lost some big pieces from that team, and they look very, very good. But
correct.
As much as I think the Big East hype train is a bit overblown to be, like there are some very good teams in the Big East, some very, very good teams. It's a very competitive league. All the leagues are competitive for what they are. Very competitive. Some excellent teams. But if we're being honest, how many Big East teams are beyond second weekend teams? I mean, I look like, who do you think from the Big East can win a national championship? Like reasonably, we don't have brackets thrown out yet, but like blind draw, if you were to pull out X amount of team, and like, like, oh man, I hope the big, like you get to pick like one from a conference out of a hat, and it's like, the teams that are going to be in the tournament, and they're like, oh, damn, like, I didn't get UConn. Would you feel good about your Big East pick to go to the Final Four? And to me, the answer is if it's not Marquette, you would feel like you lost your money.
Yeah, I mean, even with Marquette, I just think that they have to play a perfect game. I think that there's a margin for error amongst the contenders, amongst your number one seeds and your, a select few, 2 and 3 seeds. I think that there's some flawed teams, but they can overcome their flaws pretty easily. The way I perceive Marquette is they have to pretty much play a perfect game. And,
a lot of threes.
Yeah, it's just
like Tyler, and you can say that for a lot of point guards, but like if Tyler Kolek has an average game, Marquette cannot win.
No.
And I actually, obviously you can say that about a lot of teams. Like, I mean, if you're, but I still think that like with Purdue, Braden Smith can have an average game and you win. You still win games, like good games, I mean, there's a lot, I think like when you get in Alabama, let's say like, if Mark Sears has a bad game, Alabama can't win the game. I mean, they got a lot of shooters that like, it's like he can't get, you look at Northwestern, Boo Buie, if he gets you 10 and 7 assists, I just don't, or 8, I just don't think you can win. Like, and that's not even like that'd be a good game having that many assists and double-digit points, but it's like, most teams just don't have enough to like, and they've got good players. They're actually very well coached. But I think you go down the Big East, and yes, there's like, Seton Hall, assuming they get in, Providence, whatever. Like these teams can St. John's if they get it going because they're very well coached. Like if they get in, they might be a little bit of a problem for some different reasons. But it's almost like if I were to say like throw me Marquette to make the Final Four or St. John's, considering their odds of making the Final Four, I already know you and I would take St. John's.
Yeah.
Because you're, the value, like, so like, and that's not saying like they're better than Marquette. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But I think in a one-off, like I think they do some things where they can counteract what a team like Marquette can do, or in any number of teams. It's not just that, but I think that people will be like, well, the Big East, like the one thing is I keep on hearing is like it's a very physical league and they let them play, and that's usually how it goes into a tournament. So that's why they've been sort of successful. And you could say that's certainly got something to do with like some. There's a Big East mentality as far as like toughness in their guards that I would say that I'll give them that, as far as that goes. The Big East has a lot of players that, especially the East Coast ones, like, hey, they're grimy, they can really play, they're very confident, and they've got some good athleticism in there too, and some very good coaches in the Big East, and it's not even like that. I just feel like that the bottom of that conference is just putrid.
Oh,
and then the middle bottom teams that are like somehow get brought up in bubble talk and such is like, like it's, Butler's got, I can't think of his name right now. I should know it. Shame on me. Really damn good guard. They've got a couple really good players. Like Xavier's got some good players. But at the end of the day, everybody has some good players, but it's like, if you can't get stops, if you can't play deep, if you can't, weather some storms and such, like there's only so much you can do. And like literally, if St. John's get in, I would not be surprised if there's like 2 or 3 teams from the Big East that only make the Sweet 16, which wouldn't necessarily be like bad. But it's like it might not be the ones you think it's going to be. Like that's the thing. Like it might not be 4 through 7. I mean, it might be like 8 or like might be 7, not be like all the ones you think it's going to be.
I think he has 5. Lenardi has 5 Big East teams going, in right now.
Okay, so there's only 5. Okay, so that's dropped off a little bit.
Earlier,
I was thinking like 6, 7, 8. Like there was some big number talk like only a few weeks ago. Now maybe they've kind of played themselves. So I know that St. John's right now is like not in it even despite that win. They'd have to like certainly get up there.
Yeah, he has the Big East 5 teams in, as opposed to the Big 12 9, SEC 8.
Yeah, and honestly, like what's going to happen in the Big 12 this year is they're going to get 9 teams in, and like 5 will advance. I mean, I'm not even like, and they've got some good teams.
Yeah,
but it's they're playing in very hard environments, and you're playing very competitive games. But I feel like you're playing not always. You're playing a lot of similar teams.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's a copycat league, I think, almost more than anything. I think the Big Ten has got a reputation, like your Wisconsins, your Northwesterns, kind of grinded out, teams. A lot of low scoring affairs, but like the same token, I think the Big 12 this year, it's a lot of similar styles, and you're almost forced to play that style night in, night out, even, really throughout the conference, not just the top of the conference.
And I think the home team dictates it all the time in that league.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there's some pretty incredible, for Big 12 standards, there's some pretty incredible venues to go play at and intimidating. And I think that will start to play. That'll probably pay dividends for these teams in the tournament. Yeah,
I mean, without seeing a bracket and just rattling off some teams, it's like I've watched Iowa State, and I think they're very good.
Yeah.
And then they're older. And there's some teams. Obviously, Kansas is one of those things where on their draw, maybe they can make an Elite Eight or a Final Four. I don't think they will make a Final Four. I don't actually think they'll make an Elite Eight either.
Mm-hmm.
But like on their draw, they could get there depending on what happens, and like many other teams. But it's like
you got Baylor and TCU.
I would be more surprised with an Elite Eight from Kansas than I would a second round loss. I would be more surprised at that. If I could make an if then, like I would bet against Kansas losing in the second round.
Yeah.
Rather than them getting to the Elite Eight with whatever odds that would be, what I would get. And I would do it whatever, on the reverse. I mean, I would take lesser odds.
Yeah.
For a much better payoff.
Obviously, this is all very fluid. So Kansas has a 2 seed in Arizona's bracket.
Puts them in our bracket.
Our bracket, this iteration of the bracket is the most favorable one I've seen so far for Purdue. So you got Purdue, obviously at the 1 seed. They'd be playing the winner of Oklahoma and New Mexico, 8-9.
I would be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean and then you go to the Salt Lake.
Not as good as it's going to get for an 8-9 coming to Indiana to play.
Salt Lake, you got the 5-12 is Dayton and McNeese State. Those are intriguing teams.
The tournament loves to do that, by the way.
Yeah, those are intriguing teams, but this isn't the year where I think Purdue worries about those teams. I think if they take care of business, in the first couple of rounds, that they're going to be fine. Baylor, UC Irvine, 4-13.
The anteaters.
Yeah. St. Mary's, Indiana State, 6-11. You would see a potential rematch with Alabama 3 seed in this bracket. They'd be drawing High Point in the first round if this held up. 7-10, you're looking at Washington State, Northwestern.
Who'd you say the 2 seed was? Are you not?
And then, and that's the last one. So Marquette would be the 2 seed. Marquette, Morehead State. That's a phenomenal bracket to me.
It is because I actually think that even though the game had a lot of Purdue fans, it was as neutral, but it was an Edie homecoming, and I know that game had a lot of Purdue fans, and even Nate Oates was like, it seems like a Purdue home game, which it still wasn't like a Purdue home game, but one-sided that way, and they called a lot of fouls in that game on Alabama. But the thing about it is, if you are going to, they don't have anybody that can stop. So if you don't have anyone that can, no one can really do, but reasonably stop Zach Edey, and your game plan is to just foul the shit out of them, hope they don't call it, and that works, then fine. But even if it only kind of works and you don't hit a crap load of threes.
Yeah, I was going to say, they shot out of their mind. I don't pretend to have watched every Alabama game, but I would venture to say that was probably their best shooting game of the season.
Oh, it was their best shooting. It was their best shooting game. Certainly the first half, it's
yeah.
The first half was in the beginning was I was really mad because I'm just of course that's what I'm getting, and being a Purdue fan down here, I'm I'll never hear the end of this shit. Where it's okay, da 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 da, and I'm I know that's hate to revert to that, but I'm there's a local guy, they're not little jocks, next round or whatever. He just likes to crap all over Purdue.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking to myself, I just, the next day on the radio with him was going to just be unbearable. I listen here and there, but it's it's one of those things where it's I was going to catch crap for it all year until we play him again, which could be 2, 3, 4. Maybe 10, who knows? Maybe in perpetuity, but it might be a while until we play him again. And so I'm well, it's no matter what, it's like, hey, I can say, at least we clearly, obviously they kill us in football to death. So thank God it doesn't go that way. That would be a very ugly story the other way.
Yeah.
But, regarding us in hoops, it's like I watched Alabama play and they really couldn't play any better. And then still hit 19 threes and I think 13 in the first half. There's just, most teams, like if you hit 13 threes in the first half, you don't see a second half. It doesn't matter what you do in the second half. And like the fact that we were able to weather that and I think be down by 2 at halftime was like,
yeah,
like you go into halftime as a coach and you say that, you're like, if they hit 26, we're probably in a lot of trouble, and like they had 13 at halftime. So it's like, as far as that goes, and they still hit 19 and, but they have to get there. And if you watch them play how they played against Kentucky, now Kentucky has elite athleticism and it was on the road and, but it's like, if things don't go the way you want them to go. And the other thing is like, when you have something on the line at the level, I think if they were to play in that game, I literally think that Purdue just would want it more.
Yeah.
Like, I know that, and of course, Alabama's want, players would certainly want it. Nate Oates, very good coach. But it's like, the only difference between like what Purdue did in the second half or when they got down by like 10, 12, whatever, 15 points, maybe at one point in that game, and everybody else they play is that Purdue pushed through, didn't give up, believed in themselves, stuck to their principles, and then really punched in the mouth and then started taking a lead and, even like a little bit of a lead. And it's like, if the beginning part of that doesn't happen and Purdue just does that from the get-go, all Alabama will start shooting bad 3-pointers.
Yeah.
Now, they're going to shoot them, and the thing about it is you're shooting bad and you're not getting the rebound and then it goes the other way. All of a sudden you get snowballed out of the game, kind of like it happened this game where it's like, yeah, they still kept playing and fighting, but when you get down 20 some points, better hit a bunch of threes because when you start taking the bad ones, Purdue will just take those and blow you out. Like, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, both teams got to get there based on recent stories, history. But
the reason I don't have a lot of faith in this, this iteration of the bracketology holding up. I enjoy looking at the UConn bracket. Obviously, they're the 1 seed, but I don't know that they get past the 8-9 in the second round, which would be either Florida Atlantic or TCU. Those are the kind of teams that UConn does not want to see in the second round. That would be, and then you, other notables here in this. The 5-12 is Texas Tech, Stanford. San Diego State is the 4 seed in this, and if you've watched before, I think San Diego State is phenomenal. Kentucky as the 6th.
You don't accidentally get to the national championship game and return a lot of your guys and not be any good.
Yeah. As a 4 seed, that's the next year you turn everyone that's in. They put them in the previous year's, national champions bracket. That's brutal. Unfortunately, I don't think Joe Lunardi is getting through to everyone here.
Joe Lunardi, he puts that out, and it's like based on seeds, whatever. But like when he does the bracketology thing, he doesn't even like really have the seed guidelines, like the stuff I told you about, the things where it's like they can't even, in some cases, they can't even play that team.
Correct.
So it's like what, why even put that team in there? Like I know that's, I don't know, but he's very good about picking the number of teams. But I saw something where I should look it up, but whether it was like Bracket Matrix or something like that, where it's like it's actually based on this thing where like all the people that put out brackets that are like companies or people or whatever, he's like the 98th best bracketologist based on, I know that sounds crazy. Personally, he's we haven't gotten to the segment, or maybe we won't. I don't know, but like I was gonna call it like Shillville, where it's like in a way he's an ESPN shill, like or whoever for like whatever, because when he does his bracketology, he'll put a little note out there on the day like who's playing and whatever, and he's like before the Purdue game was played, like last week or like on Thursday when it was Rutgers, so everybody in the world that knows Purdue knew we were going to beat Rutgers. I said we were going to actually cover that massive spread, which was like 17. I thought we were going to kick their ass. And then when I found out like Mag wasn't playing, like I was like, we're going to definitely kick their ass because and that's a crap load of points to Rutgers. They don't really typically lose. They haven't really been losing games like quite like that demoralizing. And my biggest thing was when he put a little note. It's like, well, if Purdue loses, then Rutgers and UConn will continue to do the ping pong or the flip flop back and forth between the number 1 and number 2 overall. Well, now enter in like Baylor or Houston winning at Baylor, which is a hell of a nice road win and very good. But it's like he was essentially before the Purdue game was played and maybe after, I don't know what the sentiment was, but it was like he's like Purdue, UConn, and Houston are all essentially tied for the number 1 overall seed. And the reality of that is like that's asinine.
Yeah,
like you can't have a team that won on the road in overtime that they could have lost, and then somehow gain 5 more quad 1 and 2 wins on one game to catch up to like what a body of work was. And going back to that preview show, which was 2 weeks old, whatever it was, from now, it's like they have like Purdue unanimous number 1. UConn unanimous number 2 overall, Houston unanimous number 3, and and obviously the other 2 teams lost games, and then some are like, okay, well, you like UConn lost to a top 15 team on the road, whereas we lost to an unranked team. But if you look at the metrics of that, it was still a quad 1 loss. Like Purdue has 3 quad 1 losses, and it's like, go look at the freaking bracket reveal. How many of the teams in the bracket reveal has Purdue already beat? The answer was like 6 or 7 of them. And they're one of them. So like, if you have 7 wins, 6 wins versus everybody that's in the top 4 seed lines, I think, and they were all neutral minus one of them was at home. One was a home game. 6 other 7 were neutral games. Now they weren't all on those people's homes because like, in the Big 12, every time you play, you're almost playing a quad 1 game. So it's like, Houston's getting a lot of credit, and they have come into the brand new conference and really dominated it. So you got to give them a lot of credit. Sampson, don't know that I really care for him, but he's a very good coach. Houston returned a lot of their very good players. I mean, so like they're going to be damn good, and they are damn good. But if you look at like I don't understand where it's like you have that team, and Baylor's a good team. Michigan State, basically a bubble team, beat Baylor by 30. So, if you're like saying, well, winning at Baylor is like, the next coming of Jesus Christ, there's a difference. Like, there's not like, it's a nice win. And if the Baylor guy makes one free throw, they win that game. At the end, the game was tied. Missed a free throw, came down. They had that crazy 3-pointer that went in, but the ball was still in his hands. And then Houston wins the game in overtime. So, like, if Houston loses that game in regulation by 1, does it mean that Houston's still not a number 1 seed? The answer to that is like absolutely not. Yeah. But it also doesn't catapult you to like, well, this is like clearly are tied for the number 1 overall team. It's like, no. As far as like, if they were to announce the bracket right now, Joe Lunardi, like Purdue would be the number 1 overall seed. And that's still, I mean, the number 2 overall in the country, AP poll. And Houston's awesome. They're very good. They're phenomenal. But it's like, they lost back-to-back games. They did not play the same teams Purdue did non-conference, that level of play. If they had, they'd probably have a couple more losses. So like, then it's like this, if they have 5 losses now, are they in that same breath as the Purdue and the UConn, like where they're trying to battle them? The answer is no. And they didn't play that, like, I think Purdue's the only team in the country that could have played the schedule they played and be where they're at non-conference. And that's because I think they are the best team when push comes to shove. Obviously, I'm a huge Purdue fan, but if you watch them play and you know some backstory and you understand how basketball works, like you've literally only seen Purdue's like A minus to A plus game for parts of games, not even whole games. And if you happen to catch us where it's like an A plus game for a half, you have no chance of beating Purdue. I don't care who you are. You have none, zero, none. So, anyways, carry on with some of that. Was a long tangent there, but
No,
carry
you're
on
good.
with like what do you think, like 3-4, seed or or I don't know where you want to go with this, but shoot.
No, they're and like I said, this is not by any means accepted as the final draft here, but I just think it's interesting where different people value teams. I just the way the season is shaping up, I think that a lot of these teams, I don't know, I see a lot of limping to the finish line here, in a lot of the conferences, and I think that, but I do think that there's a handful of teams that are kind of, they're starting to play their best basketball.
Sure.
And if you happen to be a number one seed and you're doing that, I think that you clearly have to consider yourself a favorite to win it all.
Yeah.
I feel that way about Houston. Obviously, I feel that way about Purdue. I think that it's, the SEC is interesting to me.
I actually think
Tennessee,
the SEC is the best conference.
yeah. I mean, I think that top
As
to
far
bottom,
as
I would
like,
agree with that.
I
Just
mean,
you're not going to get a night off. In some regards, that's the case. In the Big Ten, I think
yeah,
I would say in the Big Ten that there's a talent drop off, but I think that the rivalry factor you don't get a night off because of that. But I don't know that you're necessarily being tested as you would with talent like you would be in the SEC night in, night out. If you're playing the bottom team in
and
the
there's
SEC,
some teams in the SEC at the bottom. They're
not like the
still
Big
in
East.
progress. What?
Not like the Big
No,
East. I mean,
no,
that's just
no.
you're not getting
I am literally, and
the
I'm
DePaul
probably overstating
free
it,
space.
but I feel like we've had some run at the co-rec,
Yeah.
like where like when we were playing well in our prime, I think we could give like the equivalent of that DePaul team a game. That's that's some people. I mean, there's going to be some time, but like I guarantee you, I played pickup ball with people that are that like in yourself included, like where it's like not only like pro players. I mean, you played with some with pro players, but I'm saying I played in some elite level like pickup games like on Purdue back in the day, where I'm like I played with people that on the team I was playing, and I was the point guard on the team. It's like that team would beat DePaul. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just and I don't know that they're broken or what have you, but I mean, like they're just like they're not very good, and Georgetown's not very good either. And I think that the SEC has some. They still have very elite athleticism, and even at the bottom to the bottom middle, and some very good coaches in the league too. But I think that the SEC teams at the top of the SEC have a greater chance to go further in the tournament than every other league. I guess I'll just put it that way. Now, whether that's the most teams that do well or the most that are like have the opportunity to do very well. Like like I said, you can go through and it's like Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, I think you can take. I think if any one of those teams were to make the Final Four or more than one somehow, like you would not be just blown out of the water. Like, no, all this is speculative right at this point, anyways, because there's no bracket, so some of it might not be possible. and maybe some of those I don't feel as strong about, but it's like you can see it, right? You can see it because they're going to do some things that are going to make a lot of teams, lose. Like, that's just, and there's a lot of teams in the Big 12, I would say the same thing about, like you said, I think there's some that can make some serious run, but, you know, I think that some of the teams in the Big 12 will be a tougher out, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But how far can those teams go is my question. Like in the Big 10, completely unbiased, I think that outside of Michigan State somehow getting it figured out, which I don't think is going to happen in the tournament. You always say that, and they seem like they'll do something, and their seed's going to be so low that they're going to have it. They're going to have an opportunity to do it if they get in. That because there's going to be they're going to be like a 10 or 11 seed, and they're going to be more talented than a 7 seed or a 6 seed. So you get in a spot, and that's what they do. That's what they do. And they're very well coached, and they've been there, and they expect it. So they might just overwhelm you, and then, but at a certain point, like someone just shuts that faucet off, and that could be in the first, But I also I do like Illinois' makeup. Don't really love their head coach. Don't really love the characters of a lot of their players. But if you look at Illinois has the pieces, to make a deeper run. And I actually think that Wisconsin does too. I think there's something to be said about somebody that started out hot, took some beatings, kind of came back on, kind of taking some more beatings, and then you see a trend of those teams. It's like when someone poo-poos you or throws you in the trash, and you're think, oh, this team's not any good anymore. The teams that actually got some pretty good players, those teams always usually oh damn, they're playing well. They're the best things in sliced bread. And I think Wisconsin has some of those qualities too. But honestly, you won't be able to really delve into that until we get actual bracket because it's comes down to matchups.
I mean, how many from the Big Ten do you think get in? I mean, you got Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin.
Michigan State right now is in.
I mean, I know you're not.
Northwestern are in right now.
Yeah, Northwestern, Nebraska in. I mean, of those teams, I mean, I know that you're not a Michigan State believer, but if we're just talking in terms of Big Ten teams that could make a deeper run than another one,
yeah, they're like I said, I would rank them probably third or fourth.
I'd rank them fourth behind Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin over Northwestern, Nebraska. The funny thing is
I would actually have Wisconsin ahead of them, which would be, but Wisconsin is what you're going to get from them. They've been up. They started out. They had a favorable schedule, but in Michigan State's battle tested in a way of they played some really good teams and they couldn't win them, but Wisconsin played some good teams and lost too. But they played you got to realize they hosted Tennessee early. Tennessee beat them. Actually, I think it was by double digits, but it was and they beat them pretty soundly at home. But it was pretty early on. But AJ Storr looked really good in the game. They've still got some very good pieces. They've got very talented players, and they're well coached. And then the other thing is Wisconsin also played Arizona. So it's there's nobody that Wisconsin hasn't played that is they played they beat Marquette badly. That game was at Wisconsin, but it's they've played some teams, right?
Sure.
So it's when I'm going through and we do our bracket preview, and I do it usually with smaller teams, but I'm always who were you willing to play? Because when I go for that upset special, or when we go do our bracket podcast where we break it down and hand out betting tips that will be way better than that 2 and 5 trash that I put out there, or whatever the hell that nonsense was on Sunday, but more like the Saturday where it was at 85, 88%. That is going to be somewhere between those two, but much closer to that than the other. But anyways, when we put that preview out and submit our, put our picks out there and whatever, like I always look at some of these mid majors. If you haven't get a chance to see them play, go look at their schedule. It's like look at who they played. Like I feel like it could have been Samford, but I think it was actually like Texas Southern. I think it was Texas Southern. I think Texas Southern opened the season up, and it was like at Alabama, at Purdue. Now, when they go play a league game, I mean, they're not going to be intimidated. I mean, like, so, and I didn't look at all the rest of the schedule. Like, for example, I know Indiana State. I watched that game. Indiana State was actually missing one of their players, one of the best players in that game. They played at Alabama and for like 28, 30, 31 minutes. That was a game, and then Indiana State, like right now, they're like on the fringe being a bubble because they've had a couple of bad losses recently, but don't let Indiana State get in there. If Indiana State gets in, that's the teams like they played good teams. They played like very good teams. Mm-hmm. So it's like, they're like, once they've gone and played like Alabama and some of the other teams they played, it's like, who are you going to be that they play that's going to be harder than playing at Alabama? And the answer to the question is in their first round, it will be not anybody, basically. I mean, it's, and so those are the things I always kind of look for when you're kind of picking some of these, so like, but to my point, and I know that Michigan State played a very tough non-conference schedule. And then like Alabama's done the same thing, and those things pay dividends. Like, so I always like, if you go look at like Alabama's schedule, especially now that they've come to get into the SEC, it's like, I mean, Purdue, as way up there on strength of schedule, and we can't play ourselves. But it's like, if you look at like who Alabama went to go play, there's always something to be said about how great of teams you played in the non-conference, and then also in your regular season to like really determine like what your ceiling is in this tournament. Because it's like if you've thrown it at Alabama, whereas like we're at like an Auburn team, I feel like they have a really good team, very good pieces, well coached, but they didn't really extend themselves, in the non-conference, and like that's a red flag. Kentucky did play people of that caliber, so so I'm going to trust a team that went and saw all levels of very good teams, not just in your conference, because a lot of times that comes out of scouting. When you're playing teams you don't see all the time, like how did you hold up when you didn't really know them? And that does matter because like coaches know tendencies, they know this, they know that. You play them twice a year, especially like a round robin conference. It's like, we might beat you at home, but then we're going to lose to you on the road. And so it really comes down to like when you're playing that, it's like who did you go out and play? And so like I always tend to like the teams that went out and challenged themselves. So from that standpoint, I give Illinois some credit. I give Michigan State some credit, obviously Purdue credit, and Wisconsin some credit. So like I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams do really well. Now on the flip side, depending on matchups, I like a Nebraska or Northwestern to maybe make some noise, but the Berry thing killer for Northwestern, I think that's a lot to overcome. Nebraska, they've got some pieces there too, but they're not playing these home games. And so like, can you win these games in neutral sites? And that's where the trust factor comes in. Like no one would be surprised if Michigan State somehow pulled out an Elite Eight shit if they get in there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm with you on that.
I just think it's interesting. I think that he has the Big Ten with 6 getting in, which one more than the Big East. I think 5 from the Big East is honestly a stretch, but
would you not be surprised if like in Iowa, I mean Minnesota, these teams would have some.
Well, that's what I was about to. We've kind of ate our own. Like we've kind of throughout the season, you're more than likely not going to get an Iowa or a Minnesota to make it in to the tournament.
At this point, it's
should they make it? Yeah. I would love to see it. I think that they're definitely getting to the second weekend. A lot of these teams, which is unfortunate.
Iowa certainly doesn't have the track record, but like if Minnesota got in,
yeah,
it would be a very hard first game for someone. I mean, very hard.
I would, where they would be seeded.
If Minnesota were to get in as an 11th seed, let's say,
I'm picking them. I don't care who it is. I
mean, if you're the 6th seed, you might have a less talented team.
It's Minnesota's definitely in the top third in the Big Ten as far as individual talent.
Yeah,
I would say. I mean, I was blown away watching them. But yeah, I think that's the unfortunate thing with some of these conferences. But I think that the teams in the Big Ten that have taken care of business that are going to make the tournament, they're going to be battle tested, and I think it's going to prove to be a difference maker. And I would almost guarantee that, speaking of betting, that I would just put blind money on whoever is going to the NIT from the Big Ten
to win the whole thing.
To win it all.
I mean, but that happens a lot. That happens
it's just such a difference as far as what they see in game in and game out, as far as, and you could say that about the SEC as well. We just touched on it, but it's just the competition, and not so much even the talent that you're exposed to it night in night out, but the level of coaching and what you've been exposed to over the course of a season and a high level of conference play. You cannot simulate that with just being incredibly talented only. You're going to win games just by being exposed to that. Your record is.
Look at a Big Ten team, and then let's say you play a team in the Big Ten, and your team has a good center.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we played Zach Edey, so this will be easier. I mean, he's all league. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, think about that.
I would say the best example, we were fortunate enough to, our first episode to talk about the Minnesota game.
Mm-hmm.
If Payne and if Payne and
it's gonna be damn good.
They run into an average center, they eat them alive. It's like Samson and Olajuwon. If you don't have to play Edey, I mean, it's just I mean, you're not going to see that kind of problem.
Going back to what you said, and we might, I don't know what kind of time frame we'll have when it comes to it. We'll try and do it, but some of the best, early bets I've made when I've been out in Vegas for March Madness, when the bracket comes out, because the Tuesday, Wednesday playing games,
Mm-hmm.
But 5 years ago, and I'm gonna have to look it up, but I feel like Penn State won the NIT that year, and they had really. I mean, I could be wrong. I'd have to go look that up, but I remember thinking they just barely didn't make the tournament. But they were the biggest nightmare for everybody. They were in all these close games. They won some. I think they might even won it. But damn near won it. It was when you went to Penn State, you basically lost, and on the road they gave you just a shit fit. It was just and they were just right there, but just need one more win. And I remember thinking I didn't do this because I just it was a thing, but I was I didn't put my energy on it because it was an NIT. But I was I remember making a bet first round when I was out there. I got one chance to make a bet while they were playing when I was there, because I feel they crank out those either maybe not Monday, because when they're but Tuesday night they Tuesday, Wednesday have NIT games too, because playing games they've had for a while now, but they get that stuff crack-a-lacking. And I feel if you're one of the better teams in that for the first couple rounds, 2 or 3 rounds, I think you play at home until you get to Madison Square Garden. Depends on what your seed is, but you might play, 2, like 2 or 3 home games, and like 1 or 2 for sure, I think. And maybe you go, I don't know, but that's how you do it. And then you get to maybe the Elite Eight or Madison Square Garden, I think it is the Final Four. Then you have to play. But it's like, I remember thinking, like, watching that team, I'm like even like last year, different year, of course, but like when Penn State made it, I'm like, they were live dogs versus Texas. And I mean, because guy that basically did booty ball, like me, like I'm trying to think of the guard right now. It's slipping my mind, like Jalen, or I can't remember his name, but like ridiculous Pickett, right? Jalen Pickett, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like ridiculous guard, and he just like, that 6'5", 6'4", good frame. Like you can't really see, just back you in and just really commanded. And they other guys that could shoot and whatever, and it was just like, and I know that like, Shrewsbury was the coach. So like they just had him, and they took Purdue to the brink in the Big Ten championship game in the tournament, like, and they just ran out of gas because they played like, 4 days and, 4 games in 4 days. And it's like, you watch them, but like not on the same level. It reminded me of that NIT team. I believe it was Penn State that won it. But I was like, in this first game, I'm like, it was like a smaller line or whatever, because no one's really focused on that. So like, when it comes to wagering, we'll kind of sort of, I don't know, segue, but like at least certainly like bring it to a forefront. If people don't watch it, there's so much value. Like if you know something, but like the eyes haven't been on it to affect the point spread, there's so much value in wagering on those games, because like to focus on this tournament. So the people that make the spreads, they don't put that much focus on crap like that. So there's some great pickings in an NIT bracket, to be honest with you, as far as sports betting, because like, they're not spending any time on the NIT because that's not what people are watching. The fans of those teams are watching it, and you might watch a game if it's on and you're not, like before all that gets kicked off. But like, if you understand basketball, you're like, man, that team is like, I can't believe they're like a 6-point like favorite over this team, and they're playing at home, and it's like they were like damn near co-champions of the league, but they're playing a team from like a smaller conference that it's like they have no chance in like going to an Iowa and winning a game, like, like in that or whatever, or like this year's like Minnesota. If they don't get in, like you said, it's like if they don't get in, and Minnesota's got a home game and they're favored in that game by like 5 points because it's like in like a team that also was a bubble team. Minnesota's winning that game and covering that game and winning the game by 15 or 20 points. I'm just telling you, but that's just free. That's free money. So like, but no one, but they don't put any time. The sports books and the people that, not underwrite, but the people that like, they do algorithms, whatever, like they don't put any investment in that because it's not, the handle on it's not big.
No.
But like, if you're a casual bettor, or someone's going to be watching the show or whatever else, like $500 at Vegas is nothing. But if you make a $500 bet, it's a nice hit. So like, you can clean up on stuff like that. I mean, you can bet $1-2 grand on that stuff online or whatever, because they're not going to cap you. But you're sitting there and it's like, you just pick off the sick ones. I mean, it's just one of those things where, so that's something we might actually delve into. I don't know if we're like doing kind of preview on it, but like, I might be like, hey, we might like just say, as far as the betting angle, like get yourself a little pre-bankroll going into the NCAA tournament, or as it's going up, like, bang, 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 bang. And I remember like laying a decent low, like $200-$300, not something massive, but a couple $100 bet on Penn State first game, and then a couple of, like another team I really like, I think I can't recall a team, but I'm saying I did that a little bit. And now you got yourself a little, $500, $600, $700, $800 nest egg for all the games you want to wager on. Then you might be able to fire up a $100 5-team parlay, pays you 16-1. That's, 1,600. You can just let that snowball into some massive money if you know what you're doing. So there's great angles on that, not to, that's not bracketology per se, but we're as far as the sports betting angle, like, it's
it's so fluid, and with the bracket, it's nice to have a handle on it, but there's going to be so much movement. I think that we can agree that the number 1 seeds in some order are pretty much set. I don't see a scenario where they drop off. But
Well, you could look at Purdue's case. I'm not looking at some of the other ones. It certainly would affect UConn because of who they'd have to play. Like if you look at like Purdue, that they lost to their last 3 regular season games, which is Michigan State at home, at Illinois, and Wisconsin at home, they wouldn't budge off that one line. They wouldn't win overall anymore. But there's no way they're not even the third number one. They would still be ahead of the team that would be fourth.
Yeah. Save for injury.
None of those are bad losses, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's like how can you So then once they won that Michigan game, I mean, how much money would you put on Purdue being a 1 seed right now?
Oh,
everything. Like you're talking about, hey, can I get $10,000? I'm getting even money on Purdue being a 1 seed.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money you wouldn't take out of the bank. None.
Yeah. I think the only
99.999,
the only way that any of the 1 seeds drop, I think.
And UConn and Houston are in the same boat, basically.
Yeah. I think if there's a major injury, you have the possibility, kind of the Florida State effect in the national championship playoff. But I mean, other than that, I think it's pretty much set. Your 1 seeds, but that's really doesn't even matter. It really matters, where people are playing.
The first of those, those teams are going to be playing where they want to the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
The fourth one, we don't know yet, so they might be in. Honestly, that's going to you can already go ahead and say that will more than likely be the bracket of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's going to happen is it'll be the weakest of the ones, and then you'd be shipped out west. It'd be west, so that's a lot of times that's where they put the weakest teams anyways, unless it just happens to be like the number 1 seed out there is like a juggernaut,
Yeah.
There's been times like some UCLA's or maybe even Gonzaga, where it's been like a very good team. And not that the team won't be necessarily good out there, because it could very well be Arizona, and they're very capable. But if you look at what it takes to beat this year, what it takes to beat Houston and UConn and Purdue in the game, it's almost a perfect storm. And then you also look at the delineation. It's like it drops down to 6 losses, and then all the other ones have 3. So that's a lot more. It's like there's a lot more variance. And all those teams have quad 1 losses. They don't even have quad 2 losses. They are quad 1 losses. So it's like they don't play in sweat tournament games on the road. So those. Yeah. And honestly, if there's a year where I think. There's a year where I think we got to see brackets, but it's like I had to take, and honestly, even being a Purdue fan, you and I have talked about this. If I had to take a team I thought would make the Final Four with a blind draw right now, it would be Houston. Because I think they have the lowest amount of variance of what it takes to beat them. It's like you have to do a lot of the things right to beat Houston, and I can't say they're impervious to get blown out, but you would really have to shoot the hell out of the ball, and have it, because I just think they're going to probably be in a game. So you're going to earn knocking them out, where it's and I'm not saying that about Purdue or UConn, because you're going to do that for either of those 2 teams too. But, I think if you had to I would feel very good if you get a bet where it's UConn, Houston, Purdue, Elite 8 blindly. I would make that bet every day and twice on Sunday, even though Sunday's not my best betting day. Maybe twice on Saturday.
Yeah, you do it twice on Sunday, you're borrowing money.
I do it twice on Sunday, I'd be eating ramen.
Well, what else you got? What else you got for us tonight?
I don't know. Were you some maybe upcoming spreads or just talk about the upcoming week at all? Do you have any of some of those maybe marquee matchups pulled up maybe, or?
I do not.
No pressure.
No, you're fine.
There a little bit, I guess. Well, I mean, I can. There's some. I saw where didn't I say it was like Tennessee, like Auburn at Tennessee, maybe something like that. That was a midweek game. I was actually looking for maybe some of the Saturday games because there's some pretty decent Saturday games. Um, I mean, as there always is. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's some good ones, but no, this past Saturday had some really good ones. Um, we'll have to. We are gonna definitely do deep dive of you know conference tournaments upcoming. I know that we're gonna do like some small some smaller ones, whatever one. Those are coming right around the corner. We'll kind of do a little research on those, and then
Yeah.
if nothing else, just to like be on the lookout for teams that are going to be maybe a little pesky if they make the tournament, of course. But like some of that, we're going to try and do like conference by conference breakdown of like who we think.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know, and it depends on who plays what, but I would not wager on Purdue winning the Big Ten tournament this year, to be honest with you. And it's not that I think we are the best team, and I could be wrong, like they're getting the double bye. We are the only team since I just read this, I think the other day, that Purdue is the only team since they've expanded to the 14, the 14 team playoff. So that has never played on Wednesday or Thursday in the Big Ten tournament, only Friday only. That's staggering.
Yeah.
So we've always had a double bye since they've expanded it, which has been a good handful of years now. So, that's something to be said, that you're always the top four in the Big Ten over a fairly lengthy duration, but we very well may win the Big Ten tournament. I mean, I know that at the top it probably sets up nice because, Illinois would be the 2 seed, almost they'd be a 2 seed basically every scenario. So at this point, they're going to be a 2 seed more than likely. And then so you're not playing them until like a championship. Well, you're not playing them until the championship level game at that point. So
Yeah.
you just avoid the team that's probably best equipped to beat you in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, they have to get there. So it's like, it really depends. Like, last year it kind of broke in a way where it's like, fairly easy draw for Purdue, all things considered. Penn State ended up making it to the championship game, but they played like, 4 days of, 4 games, 4 days. So you've got no legs at that point in the tournament.
No.
And you're asking to play, Zach Edey and all that other stuff. And, they really relied on shooting. So if you're relying on shooting and you're on 4 days, in a row playing basketball, you have no legs by probably way sooner than that. But you can get there on gumption and motivation to a point, but when you're playing a team that's just more talented than you on more rest, you just probably don't have the guns to do it. Purdue is that much better than the teams in the Big Ten to where that would also become a problem. I mean, so maybe they will win the Big Ten tournament, but they're not. I don't think they're hyper focused on that. It's not that they won't try and win it, and because if you're good enough, you're going to win every game. But it's like, I don't know. It'd be interesting if they come in and just like start steamrolling everybody in the Big Ten tournament. You're like, okay, man, mercy.
I have no idea how they're going to approach it. I don't know the best way. I could say how I would approach it. I mean, I think that if I'm not needing to win the tournament to make the NCAA tournament, I think I'm really in a spot where I'm focusing on habits, protecting my players. I want to make sure our defensive rotations are crisp. I want to make sure that we're, paying attention to details, rebounding. We're doing all the little things on the defensive end, talking, getting back, rotating, we're crisp in our switches, our pick and roll coverage, all that. Like that's the most important thing. That's the easiest thing to get away from. If you have a 1 or 2 game lapse, it becomes a habit quickly. As a coach, like you want to stay locked in on that. I don't really worry so much about offensive execution, but what I would do, like if I was in Purdue's spot, you pretty much know what your rotation is going to be going into the tournament, whether that's a 8-man rotation, 9-man rotation, and you have your minutes doled out. I would dial back my starters minutes and really ratchet up. If I'm an 8-man rotation, and I know that's what we as a staff have decided on, those 3 coming off the bench are going to see heavy minutes just to get them right as far as flow of the offense and working in with those other players, maybe more than they have all season, just on the defensive end, communicating with different combinations of players. And you don't really necessarily worry about the outcome of the game. I think that the win is within how you handle that and what can you set yourself up to be a machine going into the opening round.
The only, it's a great opportunity to be like, hey, let's give, Heidi some more run. Let's give Colvin some run.
Yeah.
If you lose, oh well. I mean,
you
don't want to look at it that way, because you want to win, and they can win. They're capable. They're winning players, so it's not like that's not the case. But like, Purdue will have a number 1 seed, so there's a very reasonable chance that it's. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, will they have the number 1 overall? Because the number 1 overall seed is the only one that gets to pick where they go.
Yeah.
So not that the other 3 would pick where they, because they're not going to deviate from UConn being
where they're at, yeah.
And and then Houston, it's like what, Dallas, right? Or
Dallas, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they're gonna play those games there, right? So like you're not gonna be Charlotte. Well, let's just screw Purdue. Like we'll go to Indianapolis and they can go to Boston. I mean, UConn's not doing that. That's stupid. So like so you don't have to worry about those kind of things. I know the Big Ten tournament actually is in Minnesota, so there's a little, they might have a little bit of a maybe a sleeper, if you look at it that way, a little bit of home crowd, and whatever, and a team that certainly I think could make a little bit of a run because they got some nice pieces, but in general, I really think that it like as long as Purdue doesn't because I think there's a crazy stat where anyone that's lost their first round game in their conference tournament has never won a national title. I mean, it's something like, it's like, it's astronaut. It's not good. Like you certainly want to go out there and as a 1 seed and Purdue has done that a handful of times. Not teams as good, but lost that Purdue. So you don't want to do that. But there's no scenario almost if Purdue handles the business the rest of the regular season and they get to Saturday's game, regardless of who's that against, it's probably still going to be number 1. I mean, the only way that something like that happens is UConn wins the Big East, and even still, it's like you said, we've seen it where it's UConn had the number 2 overall thing, but all of a sudden, their Bo bracket was we'll take that. I mean, they were getting number 1 overall preferential treatment, whether they were number 1 or not. It was ridiculous, very skewed, totally biased, and which is, that happens. I mean, I think there's a humongous East Coast bias, especially in basketball. We were looking over some things and we saw Stephen Means, I believe, from the Cleveland.com, reporting fame. He had ranked Purdue 7th in the AP poll this week, which included, obviously, UConn, Houston, and then the other 3 teams that were above, there's 4 of the teams above minus Iowa State. Purdue beat all of those teams. Marquette, Tennessee, and Arizona. And all those teams have 6 losses, and Purdue has 3 and has beaten half the other one, the ones we played above us. And it's like, just you should give up your vote, bro. I mean, like we might need to hashtag this dude. Like it's like give it up. Either watch the games or don't. I know you might probably a humongous Ohio State Buckeye fan. You beat Purdue. If that was your rationale, think that Purdue sucks, and it's like you just don't understand sports. I mean, that's like saying, Ohio State football sucks because they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't. So, but no one says that. So either way, it's like not like a Purdue fan or a writer from the AP would be like, yeah, I think I'm going to put like Ohio State 9th in the AP this week, even though because they didn't make the playoffs. It's like no one would do that. And that's basically what you're doing, with this AP poll. So you should.
Insane.
Yeah, that's Captain Insano. That is absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, a lot of people out there, it's like you just can't have stuff like that. That's just absolutely senseless. But is there anything you want to add on anything?
No, I think I'm good. Saturday will be a ridiculous game day. Obviously, you got the Purdue game, Purdue, Michigan State, but you in the SEC you have Tennessee, Alabama on Saturday,
and then game day will be there. Not that mattered too much.
Yeah, and then you get the Gonzaga St. Mary's matchup as well.
There you go.
That's a huge game. I'll be watching that. You got
that'll be some late night viewing.
Yeah, that's a 10:00 tip.
Nice.
That's then in the SEC. You also have Florida, South Carolina. That's big, and then in the Big 12, Kansas, Baylor, and then Wisconsin, Illinois is a huge game as well on Saturday. That could go a long way.
That game. If Wisconsin wins that game, Purdue will be have a Big Ten championship already wrapped up before they play Michigan State.
Yeah.
And maybe en route for an outright one without any of that.
Yeah. The other one that jumps out here is Marquette Creighton.
Where is that at Creighton?
I believe so. I'm literally sitting at 1% here. So.
Oh no.
It is.
What seed? I should know this, but I don't. And if you get a second to look it up, what seed is
it is at Creighton. What now?
Speaking of other teams, and I just slipped my mind, and better about putting some of this stuff in front of us. But what seed right now is Florida projected to be? Because I've watched them play a bit, and they are going to be. I mean, I would not be surprised if they go further than teams in the SEC that are not expected to. They're expected to do very well.
I think the SEC has 6 or 7 teams ranked in the top 25.
Yeah, but I'm saying I wonder what seed, a 6 seed right now, a 5, a 7, somewhere up here. I don't know if you have the full. I mean, you may. I mean, you may obviously have no idea, and it might. I could look up too. So my apologies for even asking. I thought you just might have it pulled up there. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'll tell you, that's another team right there. Like Florida, when I watch them play, I'm like, don't want them.
No.
They're, I think St. Mary's is one that obviously you're on. There's some really sneaky, good teams in the, Mountain West.
They have Florida as a 7 seed in the West. So
yeah, there you go.
Projected to play Nebraska.
There's your West round. Nightmare right there.
Yeah.
You're the 2 seed in the West. Good night, Irene.
Kansas. So they have Kansas as a 2 seed there. And that.
There you go. We've already got our first faux upset right there. That's done deal.
So yeah, it actually is a brutal. If this was to shake out for Arizona, you'd be playing 8-9 Texas and Boise State. you at least get some talent from Texas should Texas advance.
And that's saying, that's Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona.
Oh, yeah,
Then
Arizona being the one. Yeah. So
then
then
in
Texas,
Brooklyn, you
Boise
got
State.
the 5-12 Wisconsin Richmond. That's tough. You got
That right there is
4-13
no
is
picnic right now, and they already beat Wisconsin really bad.
yeah. And
So
you
you
got the
have
4.
and so but Boise State is your, like I said, Boise State, and you said
Texas.
Texas is your 8-9.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's brutal. Then you got Auburn Appalachian State is your 4-13. BYU, potentially Gonzaga or Seton Hall is your 6-11. Creighton is your 3rd seed. Then you go down to the Florida, Kansas. I mean, that's
so we have selection.
bloodbath.
Obviously this is all speculative, so unfortunately, but we're just throwing out some scenarios for fun. But we want it on record. I'm like, the West bracket, you could just where's the dumpster fire meme? It is just you already we don't even have to. You could, we don't. I haven't seen the other ones. I'm sure there'll be other brackets that end up like that. They're always good luck if that is your West bracket, picking who's coming out of that crap.
That is.
I know Arizona is they're the Final Four's in Arizona. Well, you got to get there.
Yeah, that's.
Bro, is that brutal or what?
It's pretty brutal.
But that's
like I said, I think that
because they're the 4th seed,
Auburn is the 4th seed. Should you make it past, Texas, Texas or Boise State, then your gift is Auburn probably.
There's a whole lot of do not pass go, do not collect $200 in that region.
That is the Thunderdome, bitch.
Yeah.
Welcome.
But yeah, we'll. I'd like to. Can you, while you're on there, pull up a few? Do you have something on the ESPN app, we pull up some spreads for tomorrow's game? We can just post them on Twitter.
I do not. My phone is dead officially, but I can open up a new. Hold on here.
Maybe stick to more games of interest, but have to totally redeem myself, which is fine. Unfortunately, it's a very, very small sample size that has no indicative ability of what I normally do. But when I put it out there and it is stinky cheese, then it's I can't have that. I can't have that being the rep. For people that don't know me, people that know me, that doesn't even matter. Because I want this to be a source of betting knowledge and inspiration, and it will be. Just not on last Sunday, or Friday night, upcoming college football. Don't even ask.
All right. Let's see. There's not much tomorrow.
You probably can't get much spread past tomorrow. Possibly get Wednesdays. Probably usually only do it a day out.
Auburn, Tennessee is a big one on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a big one. But I don't think there's a spread. They're spread out for they have that kind of stuff out in Vegas to a degree, but they're still trying to figure out if this player's injured, so they don't really release them.
Let me see.
If it's a big enough game, they'll release the line on something like that just to get some action moving, because they can always adjust it.
Yeah.
Based on bet count. While you're probably really thinking about but while you're looking at it, I know you're big in on St. Mary's. The biggest thing is the exciting thing is we're under 3 weeks away from Selection Sunday, so that's going to be a show, man. There's a lot of resources. Check out these shows. We got, some people watching this. Like, I'm telling you, like, the difference between us and everybody else, we're going to give it to you real and honest. And we want the feedback too. Like, get on there, get some comments, whatever. Hit us up on Twitter or the X, if you will. Speaking of X, I'm sure there'd be wrestling talk possibly on this podcast. I'm not.
That was a joke.
I'm more authority.
Yeah, there's not really any spreads that I can find.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the wrestling. If I'm not really back with that. I'm just excited that The Rock is back. My birthday's tomorrow. I asked for a.
Yeah, it was actually
Versace.
Wish you. It is technically happy birthday, bro.
Oh yeah.
It is in your neck of the woods. It is your birthday, not in my neck of the woods. But right now, it is your birthday, my man.
It's awesome.
I've been waiting. That's why I've been holding out a little bit, and I was like, "Damn!" I was like, "It's 11."
Jesus, I could have. A nice birthday present would have been to go to bed an hour ago.
Noted. Why don't you just tap the missus on the shoulder and see what happens?
Yeah. Mrs. is long asleep. So, yeah. We'll get into some wrestling. I want to effort some special guests. Definitely Adam. If I can get Adam and your former roommate on this somehow, I don't even know how we would find him. Nothing's impossible, but I think that has potential to be the funniest thing.
If you were in need of a white trash casserole recipe, he has no peers. He has no peers. Probably still to this day.
I mean, the combination of his.
I think maybe we should just open with the white trash casserole recipe, with or without him, on the next episode.
Yeah, I could put up the
Like if he wanted home dinger.
I don't know what the recipe is. I can only guess.